Fantastic. Thank you. So thank you again to all the speakers that have joined us today. What I'd like to do now is go to the Q&A section. We have had some questions in, which is good to hear. And just a reminder for those that are watching, if you'd like to submit questions, please do so. We get them to come through on our iPad here, real time. But in the meantime, if I can refer to the ones that have already come through. There's one here, let me just read this out. I own a small business in London and I'm now looking to move the business outside of London. If I start letting staff work flexibly, will it help retain the staff who may not want to work outside London? So anyone want to pick that one up?
I think yes, it will do. I think that's a perfect example of where having a flexible approach to recruiting talent is, especially in thinking about London waiting and travelling in and out of London, is going to ensure that you do get the best talent. At the end of the day, never lose focus on the fact that you want to get the very best people for your business. And if those best people want to work flexibly, then you need to be flexible as well. So that could well be a way of retaining and attracting the best talent.
I mean, just to add to that, I mean, one of the points that I've seen come up from a lot of organisations that I speak to is that actually the next generation of workforce, shall we say, that is coming into the environment is looking for different things in terms of the criteria that they use to select which organisation they go for and work for and want to work for. So clearly salary is always going to be a key contributor to that. But in addition to that, it is about allowing flexible working, remote working as well.
It's not, and funny enough, salary is often not the key determinant about whether someone takes a job. I mean, you're right, the younger generation now that's just coming out of schools and universities are much more technology savvy. They do everything on tablets and their phones, and they say, well, why do I need to be in an office? What does an office bring? Yes, I understand the interconnection with people, but I've been used to doing that through social networking, through telephones, through mobile phones. They are pushing how we do business and pushing how business can change. So businesses need to be flexible to that.
And just to build on that point, it was an interesting piece of research carried out by Cisco about a year ago that concluded that based on the people they polled, I should add, this next generation of workforce would happily take a pay cut to actually have greater flexibility in the way in which they work. And I think that's a really important point that a lot of organisations need to understand if they want to attract that top talent to come in.
Yep, I agree.
So another question that's come through here, cognizant of the fact that we're all working for large organisations, and it's a valid point, is remote working only beneficial to big organisations? Anyone?
It clearly is beneficial to large organisations, but I think it's beneficial to smaller organisations as well, where perhaps margins may be tighter. The benefits in terms of your property, not having to take on property because you allow your people to work flexibly, could be enormous. So I would say, as I say, know your customers, but I would definitely say it's just as applicable to small business.
Yeah. And again, just to build on that, I think what's very interesting is actually trying to understand what is it that people are coming into the office to do. Because too often there's this sort of mindset that you've got to come in to be seen to work. But actually, if you look at what people do when they're in the office, in the majority, not every, but in the majority of instances, a lot of that work could be done remotely. And to your point you just alluded to, that then starts to sort of question the investments that you're putting into real estate, which is typically one of the biggest costs for any organisation.
And it's fixed, so very difficult to get rid of.
Thank you.
And also a question about what people, you rightly say, what people are doing in an office. And the culture of having a 9 to 5, whilst it's not 9 to 5, sometimes it's 8:30 to 4:30, or people work longer hours. But actually, you're still putting a hard stop at the end of the day, whereas flexible working means that those hard stops have gone. And I think what we've discovered, as I said before, that the productivity goes up because people don't necessarily think, right, I can stop now, I can carry on. And it doesn't have to be big chunks of work. It might be an hour or two during the evening or early in the morning.
Yep, excellent, thank you. So another question here. If my business adopts flexible working, I'm worried that my staff may not take it seriously and actually work less. would that be the case? And I think it's a valid question. I mean, it's something that a lot of people do question when, certainly if I say I'm working from home, I think people sort of have a wink and sort of say, I'm sure you are. But the reality, I think, is somewhat different. But would anyone else like to comment?
Yeah, I mean, all of the survey, all of the research that we've done highlights the exact opposite, actually, that people are more productive at home, as Steve alluded earlier on. And I think, by being more productive, by leaders focusing more on the output rather than the input, you're going to get much more productivity from your workforce.
I think that's also true from a Cisco perspective, and we've been long adopters of that kind of working practice, and I think trust is at the key of it, and the more you trust your staff with some management kind of effectively put in place to ensure everything's going in the right way, the more they'll respond to that and deliver the results back to you.
Yeah.
I actually think the point you make as well is around leadership. I think it's important that comes from the top down as well, that leaders in any organisation do adopt the same practices where they can, obviously, because that demonstrates that you can still be the successful leader of a business, but work in a more flexible way. I think it's important that, like all of these ideas, that leadership leads from the front.
And I think this is a, excuse me, I think this is a really important point as well, because we've talked about the technology, and clearly technology is an enabler in allowing a lot of this to happen, but it has to go hand in hand with a culture of empowerment, because the technology to allow remote working, flexible working, has existed for some time. Let's be clear, but the culture hasn't necessarily followed that track as well. And I think again, it's to a previous point that you made.
Yeah.
So, I think the point I'd just like to explore around this is the ability to start to reflect a more inclusive and diverse workforce as well, because clearly having greater flexibility within the workforce does allow that. And I don't know if anyone's got any commentary to that point at all.
Well, I'm passionate about what we've achieved through diversity with the Olympics, and how that can be applied to any business. And I spend a lot of time right now talking to businesses from different industries. I was with colleagues in the banking industry only a couple of weeks ago, and they were concerned the fact that 60% of graduates are women, and 60% of their intake at graduate level are women. But when it gets to senior level, it's down to below 30%. In fact, very senior, it gets down to below 10%. Why is that? And the response is that actually culturally and work practice-wise, women are not necessarily attracted to working within that environment. And let's face it, the banking industry has some issues at the moment around reputation, and there's an opportunity for banking to think about what their working practices are and how they can be more inclusive, not just from a gender perspective, but also from disability, from ethnicity, to ensure that they're bringing the best talent from as wide a pool as possible that starts to challenge them internally. And as I said before, reflect their stakeholders, their customers. That's really important in terms of any business, that it's not just about doing the right thing, it's actually about having the best talent that's going to push them forward with the best practices, because, as I said before, businesses and the way we do business is changing dramatically, and business need to be fleet of foot to adapt to that.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So I've got another question here. Our organisation introduced flexible and remote working during the Games to great success, which is good to hear. Should we be shouting about both of these ways of working to attract better staff, or should they be reserved for the older heads who may see it as more reliable and trusted? So I guess the question is, we've probably already answered it to a great extent, in terms of, is it something that we should be using as a leverage to bring people in?
Absolutely.
Yep. Fantastic. And then another question here is, I'm thinking of introducing remote working as an option for my staff. We have a very tight budget, but feel it's something we need to offer. How easy, expensive, adaptable is this way of working? I don't want to have to buy all my staff laptops either, but how else can I maintain our business security? So there's quite a few questions in there. Anyone like to have a stab?
Well, I think you need to be a bit careful, because you clearly do, in order for flexible working and mobile working to work properly, you do need to make an investment. But I think what I would say is that if you make that investment, you will reap the benefits in the future.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say from an infrastructure perspective, you can start at quite a low level. There's a lot of software as a service solutions available for conferencing, for example, and I think also you can start with kind of email access and those types of things as well. So these things can be scaled up as you start to see the return on the investment that David alludes to.
Yeah, and you need to look at the business. We don't know what the business model is and what they're trying to achieve, but be very careful around the planning in terms of the investment in technology, but also the communication with staff, and in terms of hiring staff, so that they're fully aware of what's expected of them and how that's going to work. It's communication.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you again to all the speakers for joining us today and for your contribution in terms of questions. All organisations should be aware of the ever-changing business environment. Even if you didn't implement any new practices as a result of London 2012, it is still important to ensure alignment with the evolving needs of your employees, testing the robustness of your networks and ensuring effective security procedures are in place. Failure to adhere to these issues could lead to a decrease in employee retention, a slow and unreliable network, and leave your operations susceptible to potential business crippling attacks. So for more information or advice on your business, you can take advantage of any of the smart working business topics we've discussed today. Have a look at the Smart Business section of the new Cisco London 2012 website. The address is running along the bottom of your screen right now. It's full of advice on how you can transform your business practices for the better. To keep the conversation going, please feel free to join Twitter and use the hashtag SmartWebinar, which is running along the screen now. You can also join the Smart Business Community LinkedIn group to continue the discussion. Please do not hesitate to contact us if you have any further questions or looking for any further advice around your business. Thank you and goodbye.